Vinland Saga is a modern-day epic. What do we mean by that? Well, remember those stories like Beowulf, the Odyssey, Gilgamesh, or all those other stories you probably had to read for high school English class? Vinland Saga is the modern-day anime equivalent of those. We're gonna go over what makes Vinland Saga amazing and why you should watch it. Let's get started. Before we talk about Vinland Saga, let's go over its background and rewind the clock. Rewind it a long time, in fact, all the way to circa the year 1000. A Norse explorer named Leif Erikson discovers a previously unknown continent to the west and names it Vinland after all the grapevines he finds growing there. What he actually found is now known to be modern-day Canada, making Leif and his crew the first Europeans to set foot in North America. Following Leif's expedition, a second voyage to Vinland would be headed by a man named Thorfinn Karlsefni. Remember him, he's going to be very important. The stories of Leif and Thorfinn would be written down in two texts called Saga of Greenlanders and Saga of Eric the Red. Collectively, these would become known as the Vinland Sagas. As you may have guessed, these serve as the basis for the Vinland Saga anime. The anime is specifically focused around Thorfinn's journey, and it shows his entire life, from his childhood all the way to his eventual expedition to Vinland. Now, of course, despite being based on real historical figure, Vinland Saga takes major creative liberties when it comes to not only what happened, but exactly how realistic the story is. Trust us, Vinland Saga is not realistic at all, but it's also part of what makes it so great. The action here is kind of ridiculous, but in the best way possible. Episode 8, for example, features a group of Vikings carrying a large boat across land. And then the very next episode shows the character Thorkel the Tall throwing enormous logs off of a bridge single-handedly. But Vinland Saga's unrealistic action scenes are just part of what makes it a modern epic. A lot of these great epics of the past often focus on one man doing extraordinary things that are beyond the impossible. Other than the examples like Beowulf that we discussed before, there are also many heroes of Greek myth like Heracles or Theseus. Even the original Icelandic sagas that Vinland Saga are based on do include some fantastical details. In fact, both Saga of Greenlanders and Saga of Eric the Red contain details that actively contradict each other, so making a totally accurate depiction of Thorfinn's life was always going to be impossible. Another thing that all epics have in common is that it's almost always about the journey of one man, from classic heroes like Gilgamesh and Odysseus to less conventional heroes like Dante of the Divine Comedy fame. All of these epics of old are about one emotional journey, and Vinland Saga is no exception. The story begins by showing us Thorfinn's childhood, and we follow his entire journey as he goes through some immense character development throughout the series. Thorfinn is what is at the core of this series, and part of what makes his journey so compelling is that it feels like he has to struggle for every inch he gains. There are a lot of stories, even ones we like, where it doesn't feel like the hero has to struggle all that much. But here, especially in the first season, you really do feel how much Thorfinn struggles throughout the story, and it makes his eventual victories all the sweeter. Of course, while Thorfinn is our central protagonist, we've really got to give it up to our supporting cast as well. After all, a good hero is only as good as the cast around him, and believe us, Vinland Saga has got an amazing set of characters to go along with him. Our personal favorites among the supporting cast are Thorkel the Tall and, of course, Askeladd. Thorkel is a Vikings Viking. He is the absolute embodiment of some of the insanity that Vinland Saga sometimes becomes. The man basically has super strength. Like we said before, we're introduced to him single-handedly throwing logs at boats. Then the next episode opens with him throwing large rocks like they're cannonballs. Honestly, he's great. All over-the-top action that Thorkel is involved with is always a highlight of the show. He's easily one of the best parts of the show's supporting cast thanks to his boisterous personality and his insane feats of strength. He's the perfect example of why Vinland Saga's more over-the-top moments are so much fun. Sure, pretty much everything Thorkel does is unrealistic, but being realistic isn't the be-all end-all of good storytelling. Sometimes it's just great to watch impossibly cool action take place. Next, of course, is Askeladd. He's essentially the second protagonist of Season 1. The first season is as much Askeladd's journey as it is Thorfinn's. The whole plot is kicked off by Askeladd killing Thorfinn's father. Throughout Season 1, Thorfinn's main goal is revenge against Askeladd. Of course, Askeladd really just does not care about Thorfinn's quest for revenge. He just wants to use the young Thorfinn to get his own advantage. Watching both Askeladd and Thorfinn develop alongside each other is definitely very interesting. At first, Askeladd is very easy to hate since, again, he killed Thorfinn's father, but there's a lot more to him than just being a remorseless killer, and he was great to watch throughout Season 1. Now, Vinland Saga fans may already know that Season 1 is just the prologue. That's right, Season 2 is technically where the main story begins. This is another thing that makes Vinland Saga a modern epic. Another thing that helps qualify epics is that they're long. Really, really long. For example, Lord of the Rings is considered an epic, and that story is spread across 3 books. Even more if you count The Hobbit or The Silmarillion. And trust us, Vinland Saga is a long story. Despite Vinland being in the title, it doesn't show up during the first season, and likely won't for a long time in the anime either. Don't worry though, the eventual goal will be Thorfinn's expedition to Vinland, just like in real life. It's just gonna take a little while. But if there's one saying that proves us true here, it's about the journey, not the destination. While going to Vinland is the eventual goal of the story, the real focus is on Thorfinn's journey and development. And like we said before, Thorfinn goes through a lot. He starts with seeing his father get killed, and now in Season 2, he's got to escape from being a slave. So yeah, Thorfinn hasn't really had the luckiest life out there, but watching his struggle is what makes Thorfinn's story a compelling one. After all, pretty much every great story includes our main protagonist having to go through some ordeal. The whole point of Homer's Odyssey, for example, is one man's really long, unfortunate road trip home. Or there's the Divine Comedy, where the main character literally has to travel through hell. Our point is, Thorfinn's misfortunes are yet another thing that makes Vinland Saga a modern epic in our opinion. Not that we enjoy watching Thorfinn suffer or anything, but his struggles help us empathize with him and make us want to see him eventually succeed. Typical anime heroes like, say, Luffy tend to always have a happy attitude, and even when they're in a tough fight, in the back of your head, you kinda always know they're gonna make it out okay, most of the time. Obviously, there are exceptions to your standard shonen hero. Even Luffy experienced a major tragedy in the Marineford arc. Last thing we'd like to touch on is how the setting of Vinland Saga is so unique. A lot of anime are, understandably, set in Japan. It makes sense, after all, that's where the shows are produced. There are some exceptions, of course, such as Monster, which takes place in Germany, or The Great Pretender, which takes place all around the world. But even those keep their ties to Japan by having Japanese protagonists. Vinland Saga historical Norse setting is rare and unique, which is also a huge part of why we think it has such a big following. Really, stories about Vikings in general are pretty rare. And even then, most of them tend to focus more on the fantastical aspects of Norse mythology, like the Thor movies. Of course, every now and then we get a more realistic depiction of Vikings, like the 2022 film The Northman or the History Channel show Vikings. We think Vinland Saga sort of falls between those two sides of the coin. On one hand, you won't find any thunder gods or ice giants in the anime, but on the other, it's still got some pretty over-the-top action in it, and we wouldn't have it any other way. With the second season out, now's the perfect time to get into Vinland Saga. And if you've already seen it, what are your thoughts?